Right, gentlemen, today is our day for time management. And this is a very interesting topic because probably most of the people think that whole project management revolves around time management or scheduling. And that is partially true because everything affects the time. And ultimately, time is responsible for establishing the project management plan. When the time baseline is established, only then the project management plan is complete. So time management is very meticulous job. There's a lot of attention needed to be put into it and into its planning, and very deliberately we have to work around for time management. Though the processes are simple, but there is some calculations involved, and therefore people do not like calculations probably are afraid of it. But there is nothing to be afraid of. Time management is a very simple and very interesting topic. So let us move on with it. In time management, we have got a number of processes. We have got total of 7 processes, out of which first six processes are all in planning. The seventh process, control schedule, is in monitoring and control. But you see how deliberately we plan the schedule, because schedule is really a sensitive job to do. So, very first step in planning is to plan the schedule, that is to develop the schedule management plan. And schedule management plan would actually explain the policies, the methods, the tools, and guidelines about all the processes subsequent to it, like how to define the activities, what would be the principles for sequence activities, what tools and techniques can be used, how the estimation of resources and durations can be done, and ultimately how to put it all together into a project schedule, and how to maintain that schedule and control that schedule. So this is all is included in plan schedule management. In the second process, we deliberately focus on the definition of the activities, and this is the job of further decomposing the work packages we had already defined in the scope management chapter. You remember we developed the WBS, and the lowest part of the WBS was the work package, and we said work package is the level of detail to be of interest to the project manager, but it can be further broken down into activities, and this is now the time that we are breaking it down to the activities in define activities process. Next is, once the activities have been defined, we find the relationship between the activities, the dependence between the activities, and we develop a sequence of these activities. And remember, when we are trying to sequence the activities, putting them one after the other or howsoever, uh, we need not know the time. We need not know the resources. Sequencing is a process which can be done just based on the relationship. So sequencing, we will see how we do it. Then activity resource estimation and activity duration estimation is dependent on each other. And rather, I would say there is another kind of estimation, that is estimate cost, that is also part of the whole game. So all the three types of estimates, resource estimation, duration estimation, and cost estimation, is done simultaneously. But naturally, we have to start from somewhere. So we start from any one of these. Maybe we start from resources. We still can achieve the same results. As far as the time is concerned, after we have defined the activities, sequenced them, and estimated the resources and duration for all the activities, that is the time where we put it all together. And putting it all together into a schedule is the process which is called develop schedule, and it is the most intricate process, because this is not only for the first time we put it all together and we get a schedule out of it, but this schedule is highly volatile. This will keep fluctuating, and we will try to control it, because any data which we have provided to it, if it changes, everything in the schedule will be disturbed. Therefore we are a lot careful in establishing this schedule, and only when we feel that schedule has been properly stabilized and it can now be baseline, only then we develop the scope schedule baseline. And later on, in monitoring and control, we ensure that the work which has been done or which is being done according to the plan, according to the schedule. And in case there is a problem, then we can move a change request and we analyze this data and we forecast the future. We forecast, we do the analysis, we do the trend analysis, we do a lot many kinds of analysis, and ultimately we develop a kind of a forecast, and that forecast is actually going to tell us how long this project is actually going to take now, depending upon the results so far. So this is going to be very instrumental in putting it all together into the integrated change control and revising the plan. So let us move on with each one of these, as we do understand that project time management includes the processes required to accomplish the timely completion of the project, and that is considered to be the only most important target for a project manager to complete the project in time. Although the cost and scope are also important, but generally the pressure on project management is normally for completing it in time. Yes, there is pressure on cost, but that pressure is only till you have been allocated a budget. After allocation of the budget, nobody much bothers about how you are spending your budget, and therefore, in most of the cases, uh, more pressure is on the time. Again, scope is a very important thing, but naturally, if scope changes, that will impact everything else. But at the same time, we are not really much bothered about scope, though it does change and it does impact. But the whole attention of project manager is usually on the time management, and that is partially true also. That should be, we should have attention on time, but naturally we must balance it out with the scope and cost also. So I have explained these. Let me explain another thing, and that is something specific to the schedule management. It does not, you will not find it in any other of the knowledge areas. But the intricacy of time management or schedule management is uh, the high volatility of the data. It is completely dependent on the data it creates. What are the durations, what are the activities, what are their durations, what are their resources, what are the sequences. Any one of these things, if it changes, everything is affected by it. So we have to move with a lot of caution, and we have to have a very near to perfect schedule management plan. The management plan should be such that we have everything covered, all the grounds are properly covered, and we do have methods and procedures and techniques and methodologies all in place before we can start generating this data. Because after this data starts generating, it is in such a high quantity that it is orchestrating this data would become really very difficult. So how do we do that? When we develop the schedule management plan, we particularly describe how the data will be generated, what the scheduling methodology will be, what will be the tools which will be used in each one of these processes. So once those tools and methodology are defined, you see there could be more than one methods to do the scheduling. So first you have to select the appropriate method for this project, and then according to that method, you have to choose the scheduling tools which fit into that method. And using those tools, we will then start generating the data from the various activities: define activity, sequence activity, resource estimation, duration estimation, and all this data, when is populated into the skeleton which was created by the methodology, the first form it takes as a schedule is called a schedule model. The very first form after this data has been filled into the schedule skeleton is called a schedule model. But this is, as I have been saying, highly volatile. This is not going to stay as it is. This is going to change with every breeze. If the duration of any activity changes, the schedule tends to change. If the sequence changes, the schedule changes. If anything, anywhere changes, schedule might be affected. Therefore, it is just like this is fluid in nature. This is rather like a jelly that if at all anything moves, it starts vibrating and everything starts moving. And we have to wait for it to stabilize. And when it stabilizes, something else impacts on it and again it starts vibrating. So, schedule has to be handled with a lot of care. All the changes in any part of the data would be carefully managed and maintained, and they will be properly inducted into the schedule. So the very first shape it takes after all this data which I just described you, which is called the project data or sometimes the scheduling data or information, this when puts into that framework, it gives us the schedule model. And as and when any data changes, naturally your schedule also changes. So every changed schedule would would be recorded, would be noted as a instance of the schedule. It will be an instance of the schedule, that this is how project could happen. This is one way the project could happen. Then another change comes, then we create another instance, then yet another instance. So all these instances are properly to be recorded, because we don't know what actually is going to transpire, and in the life of the project, when we have to revert back to any one of these states. So all these instances are properly recorded, and there will be hundreds of instances until and unless we baseline this model, we freeze this model. When we feel that the jelly has settled down, the liquidity of the schedule is now okay with, and we can settle it down, and we do not expect any further changes into the schedule. That is a time when we freeze it and we call it schedule baseline. That is the final version we actually want to implement in execution. So you see, why is it different from other methods, other knowledge areas? Because in other knowledge areas, we were only concerned about the baseline, and whenever there was a change request, we used to change the baseline and keep a configuration record of that. A new version is maintained. But here in schedule, we are not only maintaining the record of the changes from baseline to baseline, but within establishment of our baseline, there are many instances which are occurring, and all of those instances have to be recorded. जी अदील, आप क्या कह रहे हैं?
Sir, I wanted to ask that in a practical format, while in a project, the scheduling is mostly handled by a Gantt chart kind of a tool or something like that.
Yeah, of course. When I say schedule, that means something like a Gantt chart.
ठीक है.
The
Because
shape it
ऐसा
takes is of a Gantt chart. But because Gantt chart
just
is a tool, so in general we call it schedule.
it could be within a Primavera kind of environment. It could be in a project management. वो जो
Of course,
Microsoft MS
of
project है
course,
उसकी
of course.
environment में हो, but it has to be a Gantt chart.
It will be a Gantt chart whether you make it by your own hands, you make it through a tool, a computer or software. We don't mind, but you must understand how to create that.
सही है सर.
So that
इसमें
is
सर
the
जो
Gantt chart.
early
We
start
also,
और early finish और late start और late early finish और
yeah,
इस
yeah,
तरह की
yeah,
चीजें
yeah.
आती हैं.
Exactly.
Would that be discussed here?
Of course, that will definitely be discussed. That is the very important part of this game.
Right, sir. Right, sir. Thank you.
We also call it a bar chart. Generally,
Oh,
we
exactly.
call it a bar chart. Actually, PMI does not want to call it Gantt chart, although it is a Gantt chart, but they call it a bar chart or a schedule.
अच्छा, ठीक है. सही.
So, if you have followed what I have just said, you must have noticed that I am very particular about the schedule. All the four processes after development of the schedule management plan, even in the schedule management plan, I was careful in establishing a methodology, in describing various tools which will be used for each one of those processes according to that methodology. And I also have given how the schedule model will be created and maintained, and ultimately baseline, and ultimately if there are further changes after the baseline, how those changes will be handled. This is all covered in schedule management plan. And subsequent processes: identification of activities, in sequencing of activities, in the resource and duration estimations. We are generating a lot of data, and this all has to be put together according to using the scheduling tools, according to the scheduling methodology. And when this data is populated, filled into the Gantt chart, that first shape it takes, always the very first shape it takes, is called the schedule model. That is our template now. Now we will be observing changes from this template, from this first model. So if time changes or anything changes in that schedule which we have just created, we will get another shape. The shape of schedule will change. The Gantt chart will slightly change. That slightly changed form would be yet another instance of the schedule. It will not be called the model this time. This will be another instance of the schedule. But remember, so far we have not created any baseline, but we are keeping a track or a record of all the various versions of this schedule, all the various instances of this schedule, and each instance is important to us. We have to note down the reason why this has happened and how the schedule looks like now. This is the recent instance of the schedule. So the very first version was a model, and then we created various instances with the changing data, and the data kept changing due to several reasons. Some reasons are internal to the scheduling itself, some are impacts from other knowledge areas, because you see, all the knowledge areas, whatever they do, they somehow will impact the schedule, and if there is any impact, that will be absorbed by this schedule, by yet another schedule instance. And when we are comfortable that all the changes which could have happened, and now the version in front of me needs no more changes, this is something we can apply in our execution. That is where we decide to baseline it by seeking permission from the sponsor, the boss, and when boss vets that schedule, then only we can go on and move on towards the execution. Later in monitoring and control, this baseline can be challenged. जी अदील, आप कुछ और कहना चाह रहे हैं?
Sir, I wanted to ask before creating the schedule, जो आपके होते हैं critical path method के analysis, CPM analysis और PERT,
जी जी,
that is a part of the planning process.
Of course, that is a part of scheduling. When we develop the schedule, all of those things are part of developed schedule process.
अच्छा, CPM analysis वगैरह करके हमने एक schedule develop कर लिया. Now this is a static schedule and that would remain until it is changed.
Exactly.
एक term मैंने सुन रखी है which is called a dynamic scheduling, which is probably done in every single day in the morning for before the shift. वो शायद production में आती है या I'm getting confused about it.
Yeah. Actually, schedule by itself is a dynamic thing. Schedule keeps changing. That is why I'm saying the instances are changing. Whether you like it or not, schedule is a very vibrating kind of a thing. It will keep changing even in planning. When you go into execution, then this movement becomes more, pronounced. With every change request, we have to unfreeze the baseline, and as soon as we unfreeze the baseline, this starts vibrating again like a jelly, because everything starts impacting it. So we again have to wait for it to stabilize and to establish yet another baseline. So every time we baseline, rebaseline, we see the dynamism of the schedule. And schedule has to remain dynamic throughout the life of the project, because that is ultimately the object of all the changes. Everything impacts the schedule. We keep changing the schedule accordingly, and ultimately not we don't want to be confused with what the latest schedule is and what the old schedule was. Therefore, we want to keep a close tab on everything. We don't want to be ignoring something important which has just happened and we have not included in the schedule baseline. So baseline will be revised all the time throughout, and you critical path and critical chain and everything, that will keep happening. The corrections will keep coming all the time. Okay. Okay, do you understand the concept as I just explained, that the sensitivity of schedule is such we need to have a scheduling methodology. Based on that, we establish various scheduling tools, and based on those tools, we using those tools, we uh, punch in the schedule data into the schedule, and ultimately the schedule model emerges, which is the first version. And as the data changes, the schedule model keeps changing its shape, and every new shape, every change shape is a schedule instance, until and unless that stabilizes into a final version, which we will freeze by the order of the boss, and that would be called the schedule baseline. So scheduled data is also secured, because you see, scheduled data is just like input values. If I change the input values, I put in another set of data, the schedule will change. Therefore, all the scheduled data versions I will maintain, and I will also maintain the schedule versions, and I will move on, because at any time, if we feel during the execution that a particular situation has occurred which we contemplated as one of the instances, so we will revert quickly back to that instance and adopt that. That will save us a lot of time. So a schedule model is a representation of the plan for executing the project activities, including durations, dependencies, other planning information used to produce the project schedule, along with other scheduling artifacts. And if you want to learn more about it, beyond PMBOK, then you may consult the practice standard for scheduling, and it talks more and in detail about scheduling. It is only for those who are particularly interested in scheduling. As far as the relationship of various processes is concerned, though all of these processes are very closely related, you see, you do one thing and then do the next thing, always in a particular sequence or particular mechanism is required. So generally, it is assumed that they are so tightly linked that only a single person can do it all. Well, I have no real objection to that, a single person can do it or not. But we must understand that these are discrete processes. Each one of these processes has its own requirements, its own tools, and if somebody who is trying to handle all of these processes single-handedly, does he know what tools to use for what processes? If he is master of one tool and he does not understand the tool to be used for another process, he might ignore it, and that is not acceptable. If somebody who wants to do it all must have a proper, knowledge of everything, all the tools and techniques which have to be used in each one of these processes. So otherwise, I have no objection that a single person can handle it or not. By the way, PMI has come up with a new certification on scheduling management, and that is particularly to create specialized people who are masters in scheduling. These are called scheduling professionals. So these are the people who can be, you know, given this responsibility that they can handle everything about the schedule. These processes are presented here as distinct elements because we have to explain everything separately and in detail, and therefore each process will be discussed separately, and we must understand it separately. You may use them together howsoever you want to do them, but then you are obliged to learn about each process and their tools. as if you can properly use it. Okay, just a moment. I think I have to restart the Microsoft project, PowerPoint. Just hold on. I hope you can see the next slide. Can you see the slide with the schedule management plan written on top? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now.
Okay. So, schedule management plan as being the very first process, here we define the methodology, the scheduling tools, and all that. So, schedule management plan is a subsidiary plan of the project management plan, and naturally, it is going to get into the project management plan. The scheduling plan identifies a scheduling method, scheduling tool, sets of formats, and some established criteria for developing and controlling the project schedule. So all of these things are established in schedule management plan. The selected scheduling method defines the framework and algorithm used in the scheduling tool to create the schedule model. So all this effort of having a schedule method and certain tools ultimately, and putting the data into it, is to create the schedule model, which is the very first instance of the schedule, and then we have to maintain it, and that is to keep a record of all the instances. The version control of schedule starts right after the model has been created, and baselines could be the major stop points, but even the instances are to be recorded separately. Some of the better known scheduling methods could be the critical path method or critical chain method. uh, there could be even more, and new things might be coming up, but whatever the method you want to use, you have to specify. Project schedule development uses the output from the processes, all the other processes, define activities, sequence activities, resource and duration estimation, and putting it all together through the scheduling tool into to produce the schedule model. And the finalized and approved schedule is finally will be called the baseline. And in between the schedule model and the schedule baseline, all the different versions which would be experimented upon would be the various instances of the schedule. As the project activities are being performed, the majority of effort in the project time management knowledge will occur in the control schedule. When we go into execution, then it is control schedule which keeps a tab on what has happened and how well it has been aligned with the schedule management plan and the schedule baseline. Uh, the next diagram, probably, yes, this one will give you a clear picture how these things interact with each other. So here, if you observe, the bigger circle is the scheduling method. You have chosen, for example, critical path method to be your base method. Then you select a tool. Does not matter if it is a manual tool, if it is a computer tool, or whatever the tool name is. You use a tool which can accommodate critical path method, so that tool is going to be used under that method. So this circle of scheduling tool is within the sphere of the method, schedule method. Then you put in the data, and when you fill the data with this scheduling tool through the according to the scheduling method, that the first form it takes is the schedule model, which ultimately generates the project schedule. That is one instance of the schedule. And then there could be many instances of the schedule, and ultimately all these instances will yield up to a firm version, and that is the schedule baseline where we think we can implement it. Now, any instance, whether it is a schedule model, it is any other instance, or the schedule baseline, the last shape of it, all could be presented in various different methods to various different stakeholders. If a stakeholder wants to just see the list of all the activities, we can present that thing to him. If he wants to see the whole network diagram, we can show it to him. If he wants to see the Gantt chart, we can show it to him. We can show him only the duties or the activities which are of his interest. Yes, we can do that. So in howsoever and whatsoever format we want to present it to various stakeholders, that is called project schedule presentations. So project schedule could be presented in a number of ways, and any instance could be presented in that many number of ways. So this is a continuous process that we will keep creating the project schedule. It is part of the schedule, stakeholder engagement and communication. So those two knowledge areas will actually be, we will be interacting with the stakeholders, communicating to them the various presentations and convincing them how we are performing in the project. So schedule and plan, as we said, is a component of the whole thing, the project and plan. What does happen in schedule and plan? This is quite simple. This is not very complicated thing happening here. Basically, because this is one of the basic plans, we need to have the project and plan to guide us to create the schedule and plan. We need to have the project charter. Project charter is required for by schedule, by scope, by cost. All three of them require the project charter. And we need the enterprise environment factors and organizational process assets. Now, the tools and techniques we require are naturally the expert judgment. Expert judgment, as I have been explaining earlier to you as well, because this is a very normal tool and we have been using it a number of times in even in integration or scope. Expert judgment is project manager's own opinion, expertise, as well as what opinion and expertise he can seek from others. Maybe his team members, maybe outside experts, maybe consultants, maybe subject matter experts, maybe customer, maybe stakeholder, anyone who can advise him. That is the expert judgment. And he has to conduct a number of meetings with all these people to come up with some decisions. Therefore, meetings is a tool. Analytical techniques, because this is more scientific in nature, there are a lot of calculations involved in each one of these processes. So before suggesting what methodology and what tools and techniques to be used, at least the person who is developing the schedule management plan must have knowledge of those techniques, must have understanding of the technology of those things, and therefore analytical techniques would be required to choose those tools appropriately. Ultimately, we will be developing the schedule management plan, and this schedule management plan will be, shared with all the activities which are happening in planning as far as our time management is concerned. For defined activities, we need schedule management plan. For sequencing activities, we need this. For estimation of resources, estimation of duration, and even in developed schedule, all of these processes require schedule management plan. Outside of the time management, when we are identifying the risk or we are quantifying the risk, naturally, if there is a risk in time or in the schedule, we need to at that time take guidance from schedule management plan. So schedule management plan may be required for identification or quantification of those risks as well, because the principles of how the schedule is established is written there, and those principles have to be followed while we are identifying or quantifying any of the risks. So these are generally the inputs and outputs. There is nothing very special about it. The contents of the schedule management plan could be: number one, the project schedule model development, how we will get to the model, right? How the scheduling methodology and the scheduling tool to be used in the development of the project schedule model, they all are properly specified in the schedule model development. Then what is the level of accuracy required? This is the acceptable range used in determining realistic activity duration estimates. It is specified and may include an amount for contingencies. So this is realistic activity duration estimates. What is the acceptable range? Like you see, you can say that whatever estimate I make, there could be a variation of 1 or 2 hours. I am calculating in days. If this thing is 3 days long, then a few hours plus or minus may not be a problem. So my level of accuracy, if it is plus minus 1 hour, 2 hour, or 3 hour, that is okay with me. I don't care. Then what is the unit of measure? Are you measuring in days or hours or minutes or seconds? So that also matters. Organizational procedure links, whatever you are doing, that you do have a code of accounts or a numbering system. WBS provides a framework for the schedule management plan, allowing for consistency with the estimates and resulting schedule. So we will link this, whatever we are doing in scheduling, with those numbers, with those coding system, as if it can be properly tied up with the whole system. Then how this schedule model is to be maintained. When this schedule model is established, how can we change it? What are the circumstances when the data is changed? How are we going to bring changes into it? How are we going to keep a record of all those changes? How are we going to baseline, and how the baseline can be re-baseline? Control threshold. This is the variance threshold for monitoring scheduling performance. When we are monitoring the performance, how much is too much? If an activity is, exceeds beyond, say it is a 1 day activity, if it exceeds beyond 4 hours, maybe we get warned, and this is out of our threshold. This may be counted as another day. So that means I have to define the threshold. Thresholds are typically expressed as percentage deviations from the parameters established in the baseline. Then rules of performance. There are various methods, and you will be studying it in cost management, because cost management and schedule management is both are measured with the tool called earned value management. So I'll cover it in cost management, but yes, you must understand that this is a tool which helps us in measuring the schedule as well. Earned value management rules or other physical measurement rules of performance measurement are set. For example, schedule management plan may specify rules for establishing percent complete. How can you say this job is this many percent complete? What is the rule behind it? What is the thumb rule, or how do you really claim it to be 10% or 15% complete? So there must be a reason behind it. It should not be just because my guess is 10%, so it is 10% complete. So it should be an acceptable rule. And it is not only acceptable in one industry, it should be universally acceptable rule. So such a rule must be established for the project. Control accounts at which management of progress and schedule will be measured. Earned value measurement techniques will give us a lot many formulas and percentages how we can do that. And there is a separate standard for earned value management which can also be studied to supplement that knowledge. But we will cover earned value management in cost management. Then the variations from schedule and how schedule performance index is created. This is all part of earned value management. Reporting formats, what reports are to be created, what would be the format of them, and how frequently those reports are to be reported or sent to various stakeholders. This has to be established, and process descriptions are also to be provided. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, I move on to define activities process. This is pretty much simple, but in define activities, what we are doing is we are identifying and documenting the specific actions to be performed to produce the project. Why are we doing this project? The scope of this project is to be met. The product scope. What is the deliverable of the product of the project? That deliverable has to be created, and to deliver that deliverable, we must perform certain activities, and only those activities which contribute towards the development of that deliverable would be counted as kosher activities. Otherwise, if I'm doing an activity which is not contributing to the product of the project, that is a redundant activity, and such activities out of scope should not have been included. Similarly, if an activity is required, it is must to achieve the target, to achieve the deliverable, then we cannot think of missing it out. We cannot miss out an important activity, and we cannot add a redundant activity into our project. So again, this specifies the scope that work and only the work will be included in the activities. Key benefit of this process is to break down the work packages into activities. You see, we had broken down the project into work packages in WBS, create WBS process of scope. Now we are further breaking down the work packages into activities that provide a basis for estimating, because things are now broken down to that level where we can estimate, we can schedule, we can execute these activities and monitor and control. We can do everything with these activities now. In defined activities, the schedule management plan, as you already know, is definitely a part of this game. We also have the scope baseline, which will give us the mm, WBS and the list of work packages, which is in the WBS dictionary. We have the enterprise environmental factor and process assets to use. And you remember in WBS, when we were creating it, we were using a tool called decomposition, and that was there used for the purposes of breaking down the project into work packages. Now we are going to use it, decomposition, for breaking down the work packages into activities. So this is a further level of decomposition. Moreover, we use another tool here, which is called rolling wave planning. If you remember, we already have studied in the beginning, there is a term called progressive elaboration. Progressive elaboration was that as we move ahead, due to the uncertainty inherent in the project, as we move ahead in the life of the project, we progressively learn more things, new facts become available, new data becomes available, and we refine our plan, we elaborate further certain things which could not have been elaborated earlier, and we refine our plan, we keep amending our plan by progressive elaboration. But that concept was more strategic in nature. It applied to the project and its phases. No, it is more strategic in nature. But the same concept, if applied at the tactical level, at the work package and activity level, like I uh, I know there is an activity and I don't know what resources are to be used in it. So when I learn what resources, I will then add those resources. Till then, I can assume some figure. So this is called rolling wave planning. As we roll out our plan in waves, in first wave we will take some assumption. In second wave we know we refine the assumption, and ultimately when the fact becomes available and actual true data becomes available, then we again in that wave we will plan it even further to the detailed level. So, classically speaking, progressive elaboration and rolling wave planning are the same concept, only the level is different. Progressive elaboration is applied at the strategic level, and rolling wave planning is applied at the tactical level. And what do I mean by tactical level? At work package and activity level. And what do I mean by strategic level? At project and phase level. So this is rolling wave planning, and then we use the expert judgment. Ultimately, we yield out three items, three outputs coming out from this process. One is the activity list. This is a detailed list of all the activities which have to be done to develop the project's deliverable or product. This will not include any activity which is redundant, which is useless, which is not contributing towards the development of that product, and it will not miss out any necessary activity. So this is to be created with a lot of caution. Then all the activities which I have created, I will also define their attributes. What is the information about these activities I need to collect? Like I need to collect duration, I need to collect the dependencies, I need to collect a lot many other things. Whatever information I need to collect about each one of these activities would become an attribute to that. So I will recognize these attributes as well. Although I am not saying that I fill in the value of each one of those attributes right now, because that would be done in the subsequent steps. But at least I establish the attributes, which are the attributes I need to record for each activity. Then lastly, we have another output, that is the milestone list. What is a milestone list? Before we discuss that, we must understand what a milestone really means. So the house is open. Do let me know what you think about what a milestone is.
A milestone is somewhere defined, objective has been achieved for that particular activity. I mean, for instance, there could be some kind of uh, some kind of calibration that needs to be done, and this calibration has been done and it has been tested and verified through the quality circle that that
Right.
particular calibration has been accomplished. So that is a milestone.
Okay. So that is a moment in time when a desired deliverable is not only delivered, but it has been accepted according to whatever the principles were. So it has completed all the formalities and it is now now have been delivered, and that means that we have ultimately achieved that target. So that milestone has been achieved. So everybody agrees with that definition?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So just remember, milestone is a event, is a point in time. A milestone is not a deliverable. A milestone is not an activity. A milestone is not a date. A milestone is just a point in time in the continuum of the time. In the life of the project, that is just a moment, a point in time. And at that point in time, something has been accomplished. Something has been accomplished. Something remarkable has been accomplished. When something remarkable has been accomplished, we declare that if that achievement is made, we will meet that milestone. We will achieve that milestone. There is a difference between a milestone and a deadline. Deadline is a date. Milestone is not a date. Although you can associate a deadline with a milestone, but a milestone itself is not a date. If you say this target must be achieved by 14th of January, then 14th of January is a deadline, but meeting of that target is a milestone. The milestone could have been achieved a day earlier or a day later. The milestone will be achieved. But if it is not achieved in time, then you can say the deadline has been missed. But still the milestone has been achieved, maybe later, but it has been achieved. So how do we define a milestone? Basically, as I said, this is some remarkable happening. But you see, there are many other happenings, there are many other instances in a project which are not that remarkable. We just call them events. We just call them events. The start of a project is an event, the finish of a project is an event, an activity starts, that is an event, an activity finishes, that is an event, work package starts, work package finishes, phase starts, phase finishes. These are all different, events. Now, in the life of a project, there could be hundreds and thousands of events. And some of those events could be more important than others. For example, when a phase ends, there is a specific achievement, there is a deliverable delivered, it is accepted, it is properly, recorded, and that is an achievement. So probably I would call that event when this remarkable accomplishment has been achieved to be the milestone. Maybe the end of the project is the biggest milestone of all. Maybe within a phase, there could be, one set of activities yield something major. So we may call that a milestone. So we will have a number of milestones. All the milestones are actually events, but all the events are not milestones. Do you understand my point?
Yes, sir. Every event cannot be significant enough to be called as a milestone.
Wonderful, wonderful. That is exactly what I meant. Moreover, um, at this stage, when we know nothing, we just know the names of the activities. Why are we trying to create a milestone list, and what use is it for us?
It is normally used in contracts once you are, tagging along the payment schedule along
Okay,
with the achievements that have been made. So you create milestones to,
right.
match them with the payments.
Wonderful. That is a very good input. And actually, when we do an agreement with someone, certain milestones are established right from the contractor side, and moreover, we know the end of the project, the end of the phases. They could also be the milestone, and there could be some other milestones which have been specified by us. We could define certain milestones within a phase or a project. So all those milestones could be contemplated at this stage. We do not need to know the duration of all the activities or the resources or any other thing to or even the sequence of the activities to establish the milestone list. Milestone list is uh, you know is a generic list which could be created without anything else. If I just know the activities, probably I can associate the milestones with that. So from this process, a milestone list is developed. Now this milestone list is only important for one purpose, and that is the subsequent activity process. The subsequent process to this is sequence activities. We can sequence activities more authentically if we know the milestone list. Can someone justify this statement? Why is it easier for me to create a better schedule, a sequence in activities if I know the milestones?
So definitely, once a milestone is achieved, it is reported to various departments uh, which need to start their initiate their own sequence of activities after completion of certain milestones. For instance, a budget is to be called in,
Mm,
uh, or another setup of facilities to be initiated, or
wonderful.
anything of that sort.
Right. Everyone else is catching up to it. You see, because he is answering all the questions. I need your output as well. Are you all with us? Are you getting what the message is?
Milestone perhaps also gives you a logical activity. That first, this is the milestone that we have to achieve. Then the second one, then the third one actually brings you in the relation that we have talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That will help better for make a sequence.
Right.
Milestone A once completed, then it gets to, okay, now we are going to get to milestone B, and it actually gives us the percentage of the work that we have completed so far, or the project we have completed so far.
Mm. Mubin, I cannot see your mic. Are you unable to speak or what? You can write down. You there, Mubin? Okay. Adris, what about you? Is it okay with you? Are you getting me?
Yes, sir. It's clear everything.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, I just need to add one thing here, and that is, you see, what is the biggest milestone of a project? What could be the biggest milestone for a project?
It will be the timely completion of the whole of the project.
Timely completion is resulted by the delivery of the product. So I will tie all the milestones with some product. Therefore, the delivery of the end product and acceptance of that would tantamount to the success of the project or completion of the project, and that would be the milestone, biggest milestone of
Yes.
the project. Similarly,
Yes.
other milestones could be, something marking the end of a phase, something marking the end of a work package, maybe, an important work package or whatever. So I will list down all those things into a milestone list. And that, why is it instrumental? When a project finishes, that is the last milestone. When a project finishes, all the activities culminate at that point. At the finish point, everything must finish. Because if the objective of the target is met, no more activities are needed. So all the activities culminate on that single point to announce the closing of the project. Similarly, phases are surgical parts of the same project, and every phase is to be treated like a project by itself, and every phase has its own deliverable. And until and unless you achieve that deliverable, you are not being allowed to move on to the next phase, and therefore there is a deliverable at the end of every phase and a milestone achievement at that point as well. So all the activities of that phase must culminate at that point. And from that point on, the next phase starts. That means the new activities will start, you know, figuring out from that point. Configuration of those activities will start. So the culmination of activities and origination of activities, the milestones will normally be marked by arrows getting into it to mark the milestones culmination, and arrows coming out of it, more than one activity is generating out of it. That point is usually considered as a milestone. So when I am developing a sequence of activities, this could be very helpful. The milestone list could be very helpful to indicate achievement of certain bigger milestones. The arrows will dominantly show how the things are happening in my project. So the sequence establishment would be superimposed by this milestone list, and that would give me a better sequence. So this process only gives me one thing, and that is, the milestone list is going to be helpful in getting the sequence of the activities formulated. So we will develop the logical sequence of the work in sequencing, and that is exactly why we need to have all the three things: activity list, activity attribute, and milestone list. And naturally, we do have the schedule management plan also in it. We also need the scope statement, as if it is right in front of us. What is the scope we want to meet, and are we going according to that? And then the enterprise environmental factors and process assets. Now the tools used here uh, is precedence diagramming method. This I will uh, discuss with you in detail. Precedence diagramming method is a network diagramming method in which the flow of activities, the sequence of activities, is portrayed in form of a diagram. Then another tool to be used here is to determine the dependency of the activities. Which activity is dependent on what activity, and how and why. And this is also going to yield result in the schedule network diagram. And if there are any leads and lags. What are leads and lags? Lag is a gap between two activities which has to be given due to certain reason. This is kind of a wait time. Like, you cannot construct a wall until and unless the foundation has completed and 24 hours or 48 hours have passed, as if the foundation has taken strength. So we have to give a gap of 48 hours after the construction of foundation to start work on the wall. So this is a gap which has to be perforce given between these two activities, and this is called a lag of 48 hours or 2 days. If there has to be a small little overlap created between two activities, like you see, you can say before the finish of this activity, 1 day before the finish of this activity, the next activity can start. So that would overlap for 1 day, and that is giving a lead of 1 day to the subsequent activity, and therefore this would be called as a lead. We'll talk more about these things, but this is what we are going to use. These are the various tools: precedence diagramming, dependency determination, and leads and lags. And due to these things, we will be able to create a project schedule network diagram for our project. Project documents will be updated according to that, and our sequence will be ready. And remember this, you can see here, activity list, attribute, and milestone are coming from the defined activities into the sequence. But this milestone list is only required to be sent to sequence activities and nowhere else, because once it becomes the part of the sequence, it will automatically be translated into the Gantt chart, and milestone list milestones can be seen by anyone in the Gantt chart. Therefore, we don't have to give this milestone list to develop schedule or to any other process, because they have no use of these milestone lists. This has once been inducted into the sequence, then all job is done. There is nothing more here to say. Let me move on to the network diagram itself. Okay, you can see this diagram. This is a sample precedence diagramming method as per PMBOK. In a precedence diagramming method, activities are shown as boxes, and arrows which connect them, they show the relationship and flow of the project, the direction of flow. The things start from begin point and finish at end point. This is the start and finish of the project. We have to provide these two boxes in a precedence diagramming method. That is a must. This is the only probably flaw I can see in this method, that you have to provide a starting point and an ending point. Otherwise, this is an excellent method. There used to be another method which is now obsolete. We used to call it arrow diagramming method. And in arrow diagramming method, the activities were shown as arrows. And where the activity, next activity starts, you used to have a point in time shown, a event shown like a small little circle at the end of a circle, end of the activity, and that would represent an event. But here we are not showing any events because that method is obsolete because of various reasons. And there were a lot of miscalculation in that. There are a lot many things which could not be done in that, and when we tried to do it there used to be certain misunderstandings developed. Now in this method, every activity has its own box. So all the information about the activity, all the attributes about the activities could be written down here within this box, and we can calculate everything about that box and that activity in that box. The lines which are showing the linkages, they actually show what is dependent on whom. The point from where an arrow starts, that shows that the activity behind that point, a activity for this matter, is a predecessor. And where the arrow finishes, that activity is a successor. Now, generally speaking, people assume that the activity which is done earlier is the predecessor and which is done later is a successor. That is pretty true in many cases, but I would not go by that definition. Predecessor is not always the first activity, and successor is not always the next activity. But yes, I do agree that there is a dependency on the predecessor, and who is depending on the predecessor? That is the successor. So like in this case, B is depending on A. B is dependent on A. So in this case, C is dependent on B. E is also dependent on B. So from where the arrow generates, that is a point which shows the successor, predecessor. And where the arrow is there, that means this is the successor. So here E is the successor of two activities. It is dependent on B as well as on D. So it has two predecessors. H, predecessor activity, there are two activities dependent on it. C and F both are dependent on H. But C is dependent on H as well as B. Are you all getting me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is the simple definition. How you show the dependency. This is the dependency determination. But the interesting part of this this network diagram is that in this kind of a network diagram, you can not only show this kind of relationship, the finish to start relationship, that if A finishes, B can start. We can show other kinds of relationships also. The relationship between A and B is if A is finished, only then B can start. But there could be other kinds of relationships like between B and C. The relationship is not finish to start, it is start to start. Which means as soon as B starts, C can start. So C cannot start before B starts, but C can start anytime after B has started. It may start simultaneously, it may start later, but the relationship defined here is start to start. Then between F and G, you can see it is a finish to start relationship with a gap or a lag of 15 days. After the completion of F, only after the completion of F, waiting 15 days, you can start doing G. Meaning what? Only 15 days after the finishing of F can the G be started. Only 15 days after F has finished, G can be started. Now look at the relationship between H and I. That shows start to start relationship between H and I, but with a lag of 10 days. So when can I start? It can start 10 days after H has started. After the start, 10 days after the start of H, I can start, not before that. So you have observed that these relationships, the predecessor always imposes the condition until and unless I finish or until and unless I start. So the condition is given by the predecessor and the successor has the option. It can start, like between A and B. After A has finished, B can start. It can start immediately or it can start after 1 month or 1 year. That does not, there is no restriction that B must start as soon as A has finished. There is no restriction. The only restriction is B cannot start until and unless A has finished. So here also in between H and I cannot start until unless 10 days have passed after H has started. I can only start after that. 10 days must have passed after H has started. But as far as delaying it is concerned, I can delay it for 5 days, 10 days, 20 days, whatever. If I have the capacity to delay, if I have that much, time available to waste. Then there is yet another kind of relationship between L and J, and that is finish to finish. L is the predecessor, J is the successor. L must have finished as if J can be finished. So the condition is, before L has finished, J has no authority to finish. Even if the job of J is done, J will not be declared finished until and unless L has also finished. If L has finished, J can finish, or J can finish later, anytime later, 2 days, 5 days, 10 days after L, it can finish anytime. But because J is also dependent on I, that means J can also not start before I has finished. So I must have finished as if J can start, and L must have finished as if J can finish. So this is constraint from both sides, start and finish also. So it has to fulfill these two conditions. As many are the arrows, so that many are the number of constraints. So E has two constraints. B must have finished and D must have finished. So B and D both must have finished as if E can start. So do you have a fair idea what I am talking about?
Sir, it's a little confusing about the waiting period after an activity has been finished. For instance, can you give some kind of example to identify this kind of an?
Yeah, of course, I'll give the example. But for the time being, I just wanted to show you that these kind of relationships do exist. Let me move on to that part. Here it is. These are the four kinds of relationships which are possible. Finish to start, which is a most natural relationship found in projects. More than 90% of your activities will probably be like finish to start. Rather, in some of the projects, 100% of the activities are finish to start. But there are other possibilities also. There could be a start to start relationship. There could be a finish to finish relationship. And the most impossible kind of a relationship is start to finish. Let me explain each one of these. Uh, First, let us see how to show them, how to represent them on a diagram. You see, each activity is shown as a box. And box has two edges, a starting edge and a finishing edge. If I can somehow declare the starting edge, this is the starting edge. If this is start and this is a finish point, this is finish. And for B, it is the start point and this is the finish point. Just see from where the arrow has originated. It has originated from the finish point of A and it is entering into the start point of B. So the relationship is finish to start. Here in the other example, lower down there, the relationship is start to start because it starts from the start of A and B can start. So the relationship here is start to start. How do you, speak it out? How do you portray this relationship? I will ask you to write down what I say right now. Predecessor activity, write down predecessor activity must, write must in capital. Predecessor activity must have dash as if the successor activity can, write can in capital, dash. So the sentence is the predecessor activity must dash as if the successor can dash. Predecessor activity must dash as if the successor activity can dash. So if you want to show the finish to start relationship, just replace the first blank with finish and the last blank with start and your definition will be complete. A activity must finish as if B activity can start. If you want to show start to start, A activity must start as if B activity can start. If you want to show finish to finish relationship, you can say A activity must finish as if B activity can finish, or you can say must have finished as if B activity can finish. And start to finish, which is the most difficult relationship, A activity must have started as if B activity can finish. Now we come over to the examples. Give me an example. Okay, we don't want to take separate examples for everything. I just want to ensure that we do not make our lives easier. We want to be sure that we actually use it as in the practical scenario. For example, we take the example of foundation as A activity and construction of wall as B activity. So if I replace it in the dialogue I have just asked you to write, that would read for finish to start as the work on foundation must have finished as if the work on the construction of wall can start. Do you agree with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So finish to start is much easier. And what if I asked you to give it a curing time of 2 days? How would you show it?
We're +2 to it. Right.
So we will add 2 to it.
Start to start.
Fs plus 2 would mean that.
Yes, sir.
Right. That is good enough. So now taking the example of a start to start. In your project, you will face certain challenges. Sometimes it will not be possible for you to complete the job in a prescribed time. And therefore you have to do something about it. And one of the ways to do it is to change the relationship. So let us say, if I'm also putting duration here, A is 5 days long and B is 3 days long. So if it is a finish to start relationship without a lag, if it is a finish to start relationship, how much time do you need to complete this job?
It is
8.
both.
Very good. And naturally, if I add 2 days lag, then it will be 10 days, right? Okay. What if I ask you, I am your boss, and I ask you to reduce the overall time from 8 days to say 5 days? Can you do that?
Only start to
Yes,
start.
sir.
If we
Then we give start to start relation with some lag.
No, if at all we are not right now talking about the lag, let us say there is no lag, there is no need for lag. Then if we change the relationship to start, if B can start as soon as A has started, then the 3 days of B would be overlapping in A, and therefore the total time will be 5 days. So this is one solution comes to my mind. If somehow I can start B activity with A activity, probably I can accomplish my goal. But is it
but
practically
it will only
possible? Is it technically possible?
yes.
Not possible
It
in
will
case of constructions like the foundation and the wall.
Right. So let us think of some creative solution and make it possible, because your boss has, imposed some pressure on you and you are supposed to do it in 5 days. Do it. Think of some creative
We will
solution.
shorten.
What can we do?
We will shorten the A. We will shorten the A. Number of days per day.
Number of days. No. Do not shorten the days. The durations remain the same. Durations are not to be messed with.
Then we will use finish to finish link, sir.
First talk about start to start link. How can you convert it to start to start?
We can give 2 days to A. We can give 2 days lag to B
Don't talk
start
about
B.
lag now.
For
Yes,
start to
we
start.
can have lag, but forget about lag right now. Just tell me,
Okay.
why are you talking about lag? Is it not possible to do it, start to start without a lag?
No, sir, it perhaps not possible. The example we are going on. Perhaps.
Okay, what I am saying is, make it possible to start B after A has started. Did I say that you should start B exactly on the day A has started?
But there has to be a lag, sir.
Okay.
You can have whatever you think,
We can start it
but
after two
even if
days.
you don't have lag, even then there is by default, you see, the foundation, work on foundation should have started as if I can start work on B, right? So it says as if I can start. It does not mandate me that you should start right now. I may start after 1 day. I may start after 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. So that is all my discretion when I want to start. But my limitation is that I have to do it in 5 days. So without mentioning the lag, I still can do it, right?
But then, sir, that link will be not the correct one. Means either we have to give finish to finish, then
No,
only in
no,
that
not
case
at all,
it
not
is
at all.
possible.
No, 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 no. You are not getting me. Who has told you, who has given you the definition that B must start as soon as A has started? Have I said that?
No, no, I'm talking about, sir. You said that a activity has 5 days duration, okay,
Right,
and B has 3 days duration,
right,
and the both activities should be finished within 5 days, okay.
right.
So
So I
you
did not
said
say
that.
that it should finish with A. I just told you it should finish in 5 days. I could have said 6 days. I could have said 4 days. It could be anything. So I have told you 5 days. So don't confuse it that I am trying to link the finishes of those two activities. Not at all. First of all, justify the start to start.
If we just do this, that you have said, we start our activity B after 1 day or 2 days, we have started the A. What if a technical person puts a logical error on it? This can't be possible.
Okay, we will
Then
talk
what?
about the
We will
logical
answer the
error.
boss.
We'll talk about the logical error. We'll talk about what can be the creative way of getting out of it. But first of all, what I am saying is, logically speaking, is this relationship start to start not okay? If somehow I can do it, I can start doing B not after the finish of A, but anytime after the start of A, then probably I can meet my target of 5 days.
That's correct. That's
We can,
correct, sir.
So
Is it
we
okay?
we
can do it.
can, start the preparatory phase of activity B once the activity A starts. Like,
Right?
bringing in the breaks or something like that, and then some 1 foot or 2 foot of the activity A has been done.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
can
yeah, yeah.
start off with the
Right.
activity B within a bit of
So
lag somewhere.
whatever you are saying, whatever you are saying is automatically covered in the start to start relationship. If you want to break B activity down into the preparatory portion and the other portion, then the activity B will not be one activity. It will be broken down in two parts. We don't want to break the activity. But yes, what you are saying is right. That is what is happening. That after A has started, I should start B sometime. as if I can finish it by day 5. Now come to the technical. How is it possible to do it? Is it possible to do it as Adil has just given a reason that we should start some preparatory work? How could you start some preparatory work? Come up with some creative ideas.
So perhaps we need to change the technicality of starting the wall, not the brick and mortar. We should go on the panel as well. So once the bases are completed, we can just drill in the panel over there. That can be possible. That aspect that we have prefab houses or the prefab building. Can do it if we change the solution.
I did not get
Yes,
you.
sir.
But are you saying that you are creating the panels somewhere else?
Sir, actually, then we need to change the activity of the solution for the wall. Rather than going for the brick and mortar, we can go for the prefab. Only then we can start it.
Exactly. That is the point.
We need to change the solution then.
Of course. You see, if there are limitations, we have to change the solution. We have to change the approach. And by changing the approach, we will meet the target timeline. So, naturally, this is a change request. This is not a simple thing to do. Naturally, somebody has to agree.
Exactly.
Your boss is so much pressurized. I am now giving him the solution that let us change the solution. Let us not do it that way we were doing earlier. And then I can make it start and make it completed in 5 days. So if I get the permission, everything is okay. So naturally, maybe he has to go back to the customer, and maybe he has to get something amended in the contract. What else? There could be some other solution also.
Exactly.
You see, normally when we are sequencing the activities, we are thinking in a simple flow of work. Therefore, everything appears to be finished to start to us. That comes natural to us. But when we are in a trouble, then we try to find way out of it, and we do find such solutions which are otherwise considered impossible. So just now, when I have told you time and again to come up with a solution, and ultimately you said that the walls could have been prefabricated. Walls could have been prefabricated, meaning what? That as soon as the foundation is completed, or it is near completion, we could have already made the walls elsewhere and we would start putting them down here. But naturally, the work of constructing the wall should not have started before a activity has started. This is a limitation imposed on us. No matter where you are constructing the walls, if you are prefabricating, then even then they should not have started before the A activity has started. This is the limitation of SS, start to start relationship. But I will be able to do something. I will have to be able to create overlap between A and B, and maybe I can finish it on day 5. Agreed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now I give you another problem. Let us change this relationship to finish. The same relationship, change it to finish. Give it some cool thought. And tell me, is it possible to change the relationship to finish? Somebody has already said that we should do it finish to finish. What are the implications?
Yeah, it is possible, sir.
It is possible. So it says the foundation work should have finished as if I can finish the work on wall. You are now not bound to start the wall before after the construction after the foundation has started. That relationship is no more. You are only bound to complete B sometime after A has finished. You got me? So I could have started work on B anytime I feel like. It could have been 5 days earlier. I have started constructing the prefab walls and they are lying prepared somewhere. And as soon as the foundation solidifies, I keep putting those walls there. And by the time the foundation is complete, my wall can complete. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Again, we meet the target in 5 days. So we can meet the target of 5 days by start to start relationship or finish to finish relationship. But in both ways, we have got different conditions. One is we cannot start the work on prefab before the foundation has started. But in this case, that restriction is not there. I could have started it much earlier. Maybe the prefab work needs more time. Maybe. And if I do it prefab, it takes 5 days, 7 days. So in that case, the start to start relationship become impossible in that case. So I may have to do it by finish to finish.
Perhaps the finish to finish can only take place once you have the experience of doing such things. Otherwise, that can create problem. Is it so?
That will depend on your scenario. I'm giving you a default scenario. What kind of project you are doing is the relationship you're determining could be converted from one to other, and how can you do it? What could be the creative ways, out of the box thinking? But I tell you that anything which seems impossible to you is not impossible. You just have to apply your mind on it, and every impossible will become possible. And right now we have another relationship which is considered impossible. Start to finish. Start to finish. Let us try to do it. Let us try to do it. Work on foundation should have started as if I can finish the walls. That essentially means that if I pull it earlier, then probably the work on foundation is almost already done. That is not restricted by the start of A. We can start the work on B even before the start of A, and we just have to wait for A to start as if we can finish B. And then the work on foundation can keep continuing, but we have finished the walls and we have gone home. How is it possible? Isn't it impossible?
No, so this is not impossible. This can be done.
Okay.
If you are going through a scenario the other way around, from bottom up, you are going top to bottom, like you are going to hanging scenario. You can do it.
Exactly. That's what I want to listen. So please come up with the solution. You are all following?
Yes, sir.
We have woken up the sleeping giant of creativity in you. So let us enjoy that. So Vasif, give us a solution.
This is like you are going from, rather than going your bottom up, you are going from top to bottom. You just change the solution of the walls then.
Okay. Wonderful. So what is the solution then?
You
have already constructed all the walls
that are hanging, or you can,
and they're hanging somewhere.
And having,
okay.
We have solution right now like jacks. We have hang the lantern, we can hang the walls as well.
Yeah, of
We
course.
just complete the basement. We bring basement out of the to the level of the roots.
Yeah.
Once it gets to the level of the root, we just add some hinges to it, and the wall can rest onto it.
Wonderful, wonderful. You see, that is exactly what I am looking at. That such like ideas look stupid. They do not look practical. But only if you can exercise your mind, if you can test your creativity, only then you will make it possible. Everything is possible. You can do it. Right? So this, I leave it as a challenge to you. So although PMI says that this relationship is seldom used, it is not even advisable to use it. But if you are at the peak of creativity, this is the relationship for you. This is the magic relationship, start to finish. If you can do it, you can really open, you have a magic wand. You can do impossible. And to give you a clearer, an easier example of that, although I'm leaving this as a challenge to you, but a clearer and easier example, which will just show that this is possible, I'll give you an example. And that is, there is a guard on duty who has to leave, whose duty finishes at 6 a.m. in the morning. Another guard will replace him at 6 a.m. But this guard, let us call the first guard as guard B and the second guard as guard A. So why I'm saying that? Because this guard cannot leave until and unless the other guard, the guard who is going to come later, has already arrived. So this guard who is currently performing the duty, his leaving is dependent upon the arrival of the new guard. So the predecessor is A, who is going to come later, and successor is B, who is already performing the duty. And if A does not arrive at 6, B cannot leave. If A comes late, he has to perform extra duty. And if A comes in time, only then B can leave. Does it match up to the start to finish scenario? The second guard must have arrived at as if the first guard could leave.
So this is understandable. The scenario that you just described is understandable with respect to start to finish. But the point is, in this kind of a scenario, wouldn't it be like activity B is the predecessor and the activity A is the successor?
No. You see, this is all the game of dependency. Whomsoever is dependent. So you are dependent on the arrival of the new guard. It could have been that guard A, the first guard leaves, then the new guard starts his duty. That is a finish to start relationship. But if he leaves at 6 and the new guard doesn't come, so we have to reverse the relationship to tie the chain, as if he can't leave until and unless the other guard comes. You got me?
Mm-hmm.
We have changed the relationship to
Yes, sir.
to make this relationship, this abnormality to go away. Got it, Ji? Okay,
Yes, sir.
let me give you what we show within the box. Each activity box, what information can we discuss in this box? So this is one way of doing it. People do it in different ways. That does not really matter. But all the information they do is all available here. And I like this way of doing it because it provides me more flexibility. It provides me more data and better management of the data. So this is what I like to show an activity with. You see, in this diagram, you see that the center is shown as the description of the activity. Maybe construct wall is the activity. I write construct wall here. Activity label, whatever the number of this activity is, A, B, C, D, whatever, or 1.2 or whatever the number you want to allocate to this activity is the activity label. So far, I have said that duration is not necessary to create a network diagram. But if the duration is available, that would be written here. Earliest start here, earliest finish. If I start at earliest, when can I start? And if I start earlier, when can I finish? How late can I finish this activity? If I finish it the latest, how latest can I start it? Then the difference between the latest finish, LF, and earliest finish, these two items, would be called as float. And that would be exactly equal to the difference between latest start and earliest start. So both ways you do it here or here, the answer will be float. Then there is a thing as span. Span is the total period of time in which this activity could occur. So we have a span of say 2 days, an activity of 6 days. So total of 8 days are available. This 6-day activity can be done on the very first 6 days and then rest for 2 days, or rest for 2 days and then do the 6 days activity. So total of 8 days span is available. So that is duration plus float is my span, or you could have calculated it from latest finish minus earliest start would also give you 8 days. So this is it, and we will, I'll show you a diagram doing that. But before we can do that, I want to do an exercise with you where I want to prove that without any duration, we can draw a network diagram. So let us do it. I'll draw a network diagram. I'll draw some data in front of you, and you will then make the network diagram. Okay, let me. Okay. Just a minute. Let me select a pen color. Okay, I'll provide you data. We have